Apple's new App Store rules effectively block the next wave of software creators from releasing vibe coding apps. Apple is removing the very tools that let anyone turn a simple idea into a working app using natural language. Tech circles have spent years discussing a new phenomenon called vibe coding, a developing trend centered around intuitive, high-level programming. Forget writing complex, error-prone syntax. This innovative method lets you simply describe your creative vision, then the AI writes the actual, working code for you in real time. Replit, Vibe Code, and anything aimed to let anyone build software. These tools let non-coders join the creator economy by removing the technical hurdles that previously stopped people. But this accessibility puts these developers right in the middle of Apple's new regulatory and security enforcement actions. What I dicking forstert, without many editors tan a d, and more quiet, developers in Apple constantly clash over mobile security. While developers want easier app access to system features, Apple argues that opening the I/O sandbox creates massive vulnerabilities that break their entire security model. A significant dispute is unfolding regarding Apple's control over code execution on the iPhone. Apple began removing key developers from the App Store in March 2026. This sudden crackdown targeted developers specifically associated with the rise of vibe coding applications. Apple pulled the app Anything from the store, showing they are cracking down on certain developer rules. Apple removed it because of a specific old rule, Guideline 2522, which strictly prohibits apps from downloading executable code. This rule requires apps to stay within their original bundles, forbidding them from downloading or installing any external software, or running code that alters app features or functions after Apple's initial approval, which violates their established App Store guidelines. Vibe coding changes everything because the code isn't fixed. Unlike traditional apps, which Apple's review team audits before they hit your device, these new apps shift constantly. This continuous evolution bypasses the standard static verification process used for conventional software. Vibe coding apps actually write code on the fly from user prompts, then run that code right on your device. Engineers call this an audit gap. This occurs because Apple cannot review or inspect code that only appears dynamically once a user enters a prompt. An app can pass App Store reviews while hiding malicious code that activates only after installation. According to, this technique allows deceptive software to bypass initial security scans. Big players are feeling the heat. Apple blocked updates for key vibe coding tools like Replit and Vibe Code, according to 9to5Mac. The sudden restriction effectively halts the development of these essential, rapidly evolving coding platforms. This stops these platforms from evolving on iOS, blocking the new AI features they need to stay relevant. This intensifying dispute has moved beyond technical guidelines into a broader debate over the App Store's policies and the potential for legal challenges. Developers may challenge these decisions through various legal channels. Some observers suggest that the lack of data protection in these scenarios could lead to user-generated lawsuits, potentially impacting the future of iTooling on the platform. Developers argue Apple uses a walled garden strategy to keep total control over its ecosystem, intentionally blocking third-party tools from the App Store. Apple claims they must prioritize user safety and data protection, citing significant security concerns regarding these new tools. They argue that running unreviewed dynamic code in apps lets hackers steal sensitive user data or install malicious malware, creating significant security vulnerabilities. Apple's new coding tools and Xcode target professional macOS developers, leaving iOS creators out. This gap matters because the two platforms operate differently, creating a significant divide in the development workflow. Apple wants to integrate coding, but they will only allow it under their strict supervised and vetted conditions. US law lacks clear rules for AI-generated code, adding more tension to the current debate regarding intellectual property and software ownership. Lacking clear laws, Apple effectively dictates how AI innovation works on mobile devices, bypassing any actual government regulatory oversight. Many developers see this crackdown as a betrayal of the App Store's original principles. Critics say blocking these accessible tools prevents new builders from launching their apps effectively. Apple is driving new developers away from iPhone toward open platforms, risking their future by implementing restrictive policies. This move does more than just remove a few apps. It highlights a fundamental tension between Apple's security-focused, walled garden strategy and the rise of dynamic AI-driven development. One path leads to a highly regulated, secure, but closed ecosystem, where a central authority meticulously vets every single line of code. The other is a decentralized space where anyone uses AI to build software instantly, removing traditional barriers to entry. If Apple blocks these tools, they might secure the iOS sandbox but will likely kill innovation. The emerging vibe coding movement depends entirely on fast iterations, and testing new ideas immediately without any friction or restrictive barriers. Apple's enforcement of Guideline 2.52 kills the rapid development speed that makes iTools so useful. This might trigger a massive talent migration. If Apple restricts software creators on iPhone, developers will move to Android or web environments. These platforms allow more dynamic code execution without the same strict limitations found in iOS. Apple's closed ecosystem is becoming so restrictive it could stifle new ideas, limiting the freedom of developers to innovate. Meanwhile, upcoming lawsuits will decide if AI-generated code and content can actually exist within our current digital economy, potentially reshaping future copyright laws. The outcome of these disputes will ultimately decide if Apple's concerns regarding the audit gap, where code is produced after the initial app review, justify these restrictions, or if developers will find ways to navigate these technical hurdles. Software development is changing fast. We're watching to see if Apple's security restrictions hold or if vibe coding finds a way around them. I'll be monitoring every App Store update and new legal filing as they happen. Follow us and turn on notifications to track these ongoing tech shifts. Is Apple actually protecting users from security threats or just killing innovation through restrictive policies? I want to hear your take on this debate. Drop your thoughts in the comments below.